Yesterday, I testified in a hearing in the New Hampshire House of Representatives in support of a bill called HB 544, which would effectively ban training based on critical race theory in the state of New Hampshire for all state agencies and all state contractors. I have covered the bill previously on this channel, including doing a live stream where I actually read the text of the bill. So if you're interested in that, I would refer you over to that live stream. But I gotta tell you, this hearing was a little contentious. It was, and well, who am I kidding? I'm part of the reason it got so contentious. Partly because I pulled in the big guns for this one. As soon as I heard about this bill, I reached out to James Lindsay. I reached out to Chris Rufo, Gabrielle Clark, who's the mother who is suing her son's school in Las Vegas, got involved. They all testified yesterday. Also, a bunch of local representatives who are very supportive of this bill, including Lily for Liberty on Twitter, who is an immigrant from China who shared a really harrowing story about how she got herself out of the Marxist environment and how she believes America is a land of opportunity for everyone. There was business owner Dan Richards, who is a former Marine who came out in strong support of HB 544. But of course, the predictable people are in opposition to this, and they said all sorts of lies. Oh my God, the amount of lies coming from the Democrats and the progressive socialist left in the state of New Hampshire around this bill is absolutely mind-boggling. They tell people it bans diversity training. It does not ban diversity training. It only bans a very specific, fringe, ineffective type of diversity training, which of course we all covered in the hearings. They told people it was a racist bill. No. The bill bans racist teaching. The bill literally says in it that it bans teaching that one race is superior to another. It also bans teaching that people are inherently racist because of how they were born. It also bans teaching that people are inherently sexist for how they were born. But no. That is considered to be a racist and sexist thing to do, is to ban teaching racist and sexist concepts, what have you. So I want to talk about the coverage that this bill got in the Concord Monitor. Now, full disclosure, I haven't fully read this article because I'm sure it's full of lies and distortions. And so I'm going to do a little reaction to that. But I got to tell you, we're going to do that at the end. Where we're going to start in this is a very good place to start. It is on Twitter, where all things should start. Let's just be honest. It's where all things should start, because what was so interesting about this meeting is that there was a constant ongoing fight on Twitter about this going on the entire time. And so we had the hearing that was going on Zoom, and then there was a little sideshow of the fight on Twitter, mostly geared up by a state representative, this lady right here, Chris Schultz, State Representative Chris Schultz, from Concord, New Hampshire, who is a socialist, democratic socialist, what have you, that is in strong opposition to this bill. And Chris, guys, you got to watch the live stream of this meeting, because Chris slandered James Lindsay. She slandered me. She made it her business to impugn the character of anyone coming out in support of this bill, telling flat lies to the committee hearing. Now, what's really funny is I actually ended up cornering her at one point on Twitter, and I said, I asked her flat out, are you a racist? Do you admit that you're a racist? Sure, we can even go to the original tweet. I said, good thing, or I said that I reminded her that Robin DiAngelo says that she is a racist as well. So we can talk about me being a racist and James Lindsay being a racist and anti-Semite and all these things, all these lies that she told in the hearing. But the reality is that according to her own ideology, she is a racist too. So I pointed this out to her and I asked her straight up, are you a racist? And here is what she answered. There's a core difference between you and me. I can look in the mirror and ask, am I a racist? And not be scared of that self-reflection. If anything, self-reflection is one of the characteristics of a social and emotional intelligence. We all have our biases. Biases, unexamined, can be toxic. Now, if you're asked, are you a racist? And you don't answer no, I think that's problematic for a state representative. If I'm asked, if someone asks me, Carlin, are you a racist? I say, no. I am not. I do not believe in people treating people differently based on the color of their skin. I fully acknowledge that people have different experiences in the world, and sometimes those experiences are good, and sometimes those experiences are not so good. I fully acknowledge that there is a lot of work to do, and there are very real conversations to be had about race in this country. But critical race theory is not the thing that's going to solve those problems. And calling me a racist when I don't exhibit any racist behaviors other than disagreeing with people like New Hampshire State Representative Chris Schultz, and I don't even know why it's racist for me to disagree with her. She's a white lady, so I don't know why I'm being racist in this particular behavior. But here it is. If someone asks you, are you a racist, and you can't answer no, then I don't know what to tell you. But that's the woman that we were dealing with all day long. Now, moving on, one of the most shocking moments of this hearing for me was this part right here. And you're going to see our friend, Representative Chris Schultz. She's right there. But pay particular attention to Terry Roy, because his reaction to this is just absolutely priceless. This is Melissa. Melissa is just a citizen of New Hampshire. We're going to talk about her some more in a second. But Melissa came to testify at this hearing, and what she had to say was pretty shocking. Let's take a listen.
And in closing, I would like to leave the supporters of this bill with a thought. As white people, we are not harmed by being called racist. In contrast, people who are not white are harmed when we don't name, examine, and work to deconstruct racism in our society.
Now, I'm gonna play that one again, but yes, she just said that white people are not harmed by being called racist. It's not as though people can have their entire careers destroyed based on an accusation of racism. It's not as though people can have their personal relationships destroyed based on an accusation of racism that is unfounded, which is exactly what these people do. No. According to Melissa B. here, white people cannot be harmed by being called a racist. And we're going to watch this again, and what you're going to see is Chris Schultz is going to be like, yes, queen, yes. She agrees with the notion that white people can not be harmed by being called a racist. But my favorite is Terry Roy's reaction, where he's just like, what did I even just hear? Let's take one more listen, one more.
In closing, I would like to leave the supporters of this bill with a thought. As white people, we are not harmed by being called racist. In contrast, people who are not white are harmed when we don't name, examine, and work to deconstruct racism in our society.
I'm sorry, Terry Roy's reaction was the absolute best. Yes, slow clap for you, Terry. You caught on to the nonsense, and I know you know. But that's not all we heard from Melissa yesterday, because we found her on Twitter too. She was running her mouth about, she was basically talking about how James Lindsay and I were white supremacists, which I thought was really funny. But she says on Twitter, I testified remotely in a New Hampshire House Committee hearing today. I felt like I was in some dystopia when speaking my opinion on the importance of examining racism in our society, when I was told that I needed to be more respectful of white people. And then she talks about the committee chair. She ran the committee in an incredibly biased way, muting me and several others of the opponents of the bill and blocking them from using factual examples in their testimony. Of course, that didn't happen. And in fact, I was speaking in support of the bill. I was muted twice. So Melissa's lying there. But one of my favorite quotes from Melissa is, oh my God. Here it is right here. This is where she's talking about James Lindsay and I. The number of white supremacists posing as academics coming out of the woodwork in support of this racist bill, HB 544, in the New Hampshire legislature is stunning and disheartening. To be clear, several of the folks have academic degrees, but their close-mindedness is not very academic or scholarly. Well, I guess, Melissa, you're the one that we should be listening to, right? You're the one that we should be listening to, the person who said that white people are not harmed when they're called racist. Okay. Moving on. Now, one of the most distressing parts of this meeting for me was that Chris Schultz actually got a high school student involved. Now, I want to be very clear. I think it's good that high school students are involved in politics. This particular student is 17 or 18 years old. So, listen, she came out and testified at a public hearing, and she's been posting all about it on the internet. And so I have to treat it as fair game, man. But the reality is this. I don't want people coming down on this student. I want to use this as a point, because this is an example of what the New Hampshire public schools have done. She is a product of the New Hampshire public schools. She came in and she gave testimony in opposition to this bill, and everyone clapped and said, yes, thank you for being involved in politics. And then she went on Twitter and started running her mouth about how everyone was a racist. And you can see in this tweet, she literally calls herself Maddie the Marxist, where she's calling me and other people racist, telling them to cope, telling them, all these things that she has learned because critical race theory is in her flipping schools. This is what she's learned. And it's not even just that. Maddie likes to celebrate communism. Maddie thinks that China's a pretty great place, and she supports and retweets stuff about the Communist Manifesto. Again, this is not her fault. This is not her fault. But there were questions yesterday of if this nonsense was in the New Hampshire public schools. And yes, when you have students that are identifying themselves publicly as Marxists and tweeting about how great the Communist Manifesto is, yes, I think we can safely say that critical race theory is in the public schools in New Hampshire. Otherwise, where did she learn it from? I'm sorry, where has she learned it from? It's either the fault of her teachers or it's the fault of her parents. And believe me, I'm not dismissing the parents in this particular case. They raised I'll call her a young woman that is well-spoken, that had great composure in the meeting yesterday. I was actually really impressed by her. But now she's running around on Twitter calling everyone and their mother a racist. And that should not be okay with anyone. Where did she learn that this was acceptable? Where did she learn that anyone who disagrees with the Communist Manifesto is a racist? Where? It's either the New Hampshire public schools or it's her parents. But I think we might even be able to get a hint here because Jonathan Weinberg is on the school board in Concord, New Hampshire, and he testified at the meeting yesterday. So I believe that the student that we just looked at does I believe she's in Concord. I'm not 100% positive on that, but I believe that's where she's from. And here we have Jonathan Weinberg, who is on the school board in Concord, and he testified in opposition to the bill. So I asked him flat out on Twitter. I said, I'm curious, since you're on the school board, do you want to teach white students in Concord, New Hampshire that they're racist? Do you want to teach them that their parents are racist because they were born white? Now, for a person on the school board, the obvious answer to this might be no. Might be no to both of those questions. No, I do not want to teach every white student in Concord, New Hampshire that they are racist. And no, I don't want to teach them that their parents are racist because they're born white. This is like an easy no. These are yes or no questions, right? This is an easy no. No, I don't want to teach impressionable students like the one we just looked at that they are racist. Did he do that? No, he said, I will advocate for accurate teachings of history. How about a little less uses of red herrings distracting from reality and more self-education? A member of the school board in Concord, New Hampshire could not answer no when asked if he wanted to teach white students that they are racist. Let that sink in. This is the easiest question to answer no to in the world. Why couldn't Jonathan just answer no to that question? The answer is because he wants critical race theory taught in the schools. That is what he wants. He supports this. That's why he opposes the bill that would ban it in state agencies and in state contractors. Now, the bill, by the way, wouldn't actually ban the teaching of it in schools, sadly. It wouldn't actually ban that. But yet, he still can't even answer no to this question. So let's go back and let's look at how the Concord Monitor covered yesterday's hearings. New Hampshire lawmakers debate banning schools from teaching about systemic racism and sexism. And of course, already from the headline, the Concord Monitor, liar, liar, pants on fire, Concord Monitor. That's not what the bill bans. That is actually not in the bill at all. What the bill would probably ban is using taxpayer dollars to pay for training for teachers that is based on critical race theory. But beyond that, the bill doesn't say anything about what the teachers are teaching in the classroom. It really doesn't. And you can read it for yourself. It's like 3 pages long. It's not even hard, Concord Monitor, to read the bill, and they've already mischaracterized it in the headline. Let's keep going. New Hampshire lawmakers are debating a bill that would prevent educators from teaching about systemic racism and sexism in public schools and state-funded programs. Wrong, wrong, Wrong. HB 544, titled An Act Relative to the Propagation of Divisive Concepts, seeks to limit public schools, organizations, or state contractors from discussing topics related to racism and sexism, and would specifically ban teaching that the state of New Hampshire or the U.S. is racist or sexist. Wrong. No. The bill does not ban talking about racism. The bill does not ban talking about sexism. What the bill bans is teaching people that they are racist based purely on the color of their skin, and teaching people that they are sexist based on the gender with which they were born. If you are not teaching either of those things, then you can talk about racism and sexism to your heart's content. The bill doesn't prevent you from doing it. Lawmakers discussed the bill in a hearing of the Executive Departments and Administration Committee that began on February 11th and continued on Thursday. This puts guidelines on what the limits are, especially under the auspices of the state apparatus. What are the limits in presuming that someone was born to be an oppressor or someone was born to be oppressed because of their sex, says Representative Keith Ammon, a Republican from New Boston who introduced the bill. If that's the assumption we are going to make as a society, then we are never going to get unity. Yes, Keith Ammon is very brave. He is standing behind this bill. I talked to him last night. He feels really good about where things are. And, you know, he has a spine of steel, and he's not backing down, and good on him. Republican Representatives Glenn Cordelli of Tuftonsboro and Jason Osborne of Auburn co-sponsored the bill with Ammon. The bill is an echo of a federal executive order issued by President Donald Trump in November of 2020 that restricted federal institutions from using curriculum around systemic racism, white privilege, and other race and gender issues. President Joe Biden rescinded the executive order on January 20th. Trump's executive order didn't do that. Again, this journalist is lying. They're not telling the truth about what the executive order did. According to the bill, topics that would be banned include the idea that New Hampshire or the U.S. is fundamentally racist or sexist. Why do we want to teach that the United States is a fundamentally racist or sexist country? Why do we want to teach that the state of New Hampshire is fundamentally racist or sexist? Why would someone support this? Makes no sense. That individuals are inherently oppressive due to their race or sex, that individuals should feel discomfort or guilt on account of their race or sex, that meritocracy and hard work ethic is inherently oppressive, and that any form of race or sex stereotyping or scapegoating. The bill addresses race and sex, but not gender. You know, Chris Schultz actually has called the bill transphobic because of the gender question. And of course, that is not the point of the bill. This is not an area that the bill is even wading into, but they just can't help themselves. In the February 11th hearing, Ammon said he does not believe in systemic racism and likened people who conduct diversity and inclusion trainings to snake oil salesmen. He's not wrong. Ammon says the idea for the bill came from a professor in the University of New Hampshire, although Ammon said he wouldn't disclose the identity of the professor because the unnamed individual is afraid of losing his or her job for advocating for the bill. And there was a state representative in the hearing last week that actually said the reason that this professor is afraid of revealing their identity is because they know this is wrong and they are a racist. Swear to God, this is all on video. You can go watch it on their YouTube channel. In the Thursday hearing, 26 people signed up to testify, including state representatives and local and national advocates who spoke for and against the bill. Much of the discussion hinged on the pros and cons of critical race theory, a framework that examines the U.S. society and culture through the lens of race, law, and power, and acknowledges systemic racism as a part of American culture. Many of who spoke in favor of the bill called critical race theory indoctrination and claimed teaching it in schools promotes reverse racism. That's a blatant lie. The words reverse racism, no one said those words yesterday. Racism is racism, dude. You can be racist against any race of people. Racism is racism regardless of what race it's directed towards. Some of those who spoke in opposition to the bill said banning topics from classrooms is an unconstitutional restriction on free speech. The First Amendment protects the differences of opinion where the government, I don't think, should have the power to tell individuals, in this case state contractors, how they should speak within their companies, says Giles Bessinet, legal director for the ACLU New Hampshire. Yes, the ACLU New Hampshire is supportive of teaching that one race is superior to another under the guise of free speech. Isn't that nice? Others in opposition said teaching about systemic racism is important to help students understand how history has impacted the present. As an immigrant, as a person of color, I see already discrimination against me in the workplace. When I get out, people think it is their right to tell me I don't belong in this country because of my accent or my color of my skin, said State Representative Maria Perez of Milford. Why do we need another bill to give people the right to discriminate against them? And why don't we let the teachers teach the kids that we all come from different backgrounds? No one's preventing the teachers from teaching the kids that they all come from different backgrounds. State Representative Maria Perez. Maria Perez, by the way, testified and then refused to take questions. So when you testified, people have the chance to ask you questions. She refused to take questions as a state representative. It's an interesting choice. Tensions were high during the hearing. At one point, the committee chair, Representative Carol McGuire of Epsom, admonished Concord resident Melissa Bernardin, that's the one that said that white people aren't hurt by being called racist, who called the legislation backwards thinking and intolerant. Oh, and of course, they didn't quote that. The Concord Monitor, you are such hacks, man. They didn't quote what Carol was talking about. Melissa is the one who said white people are not hurt when they are called racist. That is what she was being reprimanded for. And of course, they didn't even include the quote here. I don't appreciate you stating your opinions as facts quite that firmly, and I hope you'll be more respectful to those white people in the audience, many of whom are offended if they are called racist without knowledge or cause. Wow. What is the reporter's name? What is her name? Elaine O'Grady. Elaine O'Grady, you are a liar by omission, Elaine. What are you doing? It's like people can't watch the video and tell that you're lying. Let's see. Where's my place? Others expressed concerns about the bill inhibits state contractors and others outside education from being able to do their jobs. Michael Padmore, director of advocacy for New Hampshire Medical Society, spoke against the bill, saying the banning of this kind of training would inhibit the work of physicians at state-funded health centers who take the training to combat unconscious bias. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. They can go and take the training in their own time and spend their own money on it. But what it does ban is spending my money on it. As a resident of New Hampshire, I resent that my taxes go to pay for training that teaches people to be racist. If they want to go spend their money on it, then more power to them. They can learn whatever they want. But you can't spend my tax money on it. That is what the bill prohibits. Many of the country's medical associates have recognized that racism is a public health crisis, said Padmore. COVID has shown us irrefutable differences in health outcomes in New Hampshire. We must be able to understand and address the differences known as health disparities, training physicians and other health providers to understand the implications of racism, sexism on health. It is imperative, blah, 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 blah. Concord school member Jonathan Weinberg, who we just saw in the tweet, who would not say that he doesn't want to teach Concord high school students that they're racist, also testified against the bill, criticizing the supporters' understanding of critical race theory. You need to actually understand the fundamentals of critical race theory, not just look at a Fox News article or two. Dude, James Lindsay testified at this hearing. James Lindsay literally wrote the damn book about critical race theory and critical theory in general. Literally wrote the book. He's read more than Jonathan Weinberg could ever process in his life about this topic, not just a Fox News article or two. Now, of course, this article didn't mention my testimony, it didn't mention James Lindsay's testimony, it didn't mention Chris Rufo's testimony, it didn't mention Lily's testimony, it didn't mention Gabrielle Clark's testimony, it didn't mention Dan Rogers' testimony, it didn't mention any of the testimony in support of this bill. How predictable, Concord Monitor. Liar, liar, pants on fire. Caught you in the act, red-handed. All right, guys, I will be doing updates about this bill as I have them. It's probably going to be a couple weeks before the committee comes to a decision on whether or not to recommend this bill. I think it looks good from everything I've heard so far, but I'm not letting up. I'm going to put so much pressure on all of the Republicans in the New Hampshire House to act like Republicans. There is no reason that this bill can't pass in New Hampshire. As long as the Republicans find their balls and act like Republicans, they're going to have no problems. And I make you this promise, New Hampshire representatives, I want to play nice, man. I will provide you whatever resources you need to understand critical race theory. I will provide you with talking points. I will help you to understand how harmful this ideology is. I will make sure you have access to people like, James Lindsay wants to come and help you guys, man. Chris Rufo, I'm sure wouldn't mind it as well. I can provide you evidence on all of this stuff, and I'm happy to do that. But if any of you forget that you're Republicans, I will come after you and your seat with everything that I have. Because if you do not act like Republicans and support this bill, then you are useless. You are useless and you don't belong in that seat. And someone else who wants to act like a Republican can easily take your place. So I'm going to play nice man. I want to hold the carrot out to you guys. I want to say, help me, help you understand why this is bad. But if you don't show up at the end of the day and do your job and vote for this bill, I'm going to become your worst nightmare. Test me on it. See what happens. All right, guys, that's all I've got for right now. I'll see you soon.